Well, it's the first weekend in November, and that means it's time for the Rebel Roundup. What is the Rebel Roundup? Well, the Rebel Roundup is a weekend of camping, canoeing, eating, hanging out with your friends, relaxing, and generally having a good time. Now, the night that we arrived, it was dark and cold, 19 degrees. So we put up our tent as fast as we could and quickly made our way to the fire, where we hung out, talking to everyone, and trying to keep warm. In the morning, we woke to a pleasant 30 degrees. It was nice and sunny. We had a delicious breakfast, which consisted of bacon and eggs. They always taste better outdoors. And then we visited with friends, talking about past Rebel Roundups.
Last one I was on, I fell off the cliff. Jack was there.
Hanging on for dear life.
Go to the right, Jack. Go to the right. Veer to the right. I guess George was his name. He didn't go up on the mountain like that year. After I hit rock bottom there, he goes, "Well, do you have any compound fractures?" Like, well, if you broke your leg, big fucking deal. But if the bone's sticking out, I'll give you a hand.
He was hurting too. He was just sitting there. I said, "What's wrong, Rich?" "I'm hurting, man." I fell off the cliff.
Yeah, we got flooded out last year?
The flood coming up and sitting there on flood watch. Watching the river rise. And moving across to the campground, the parking lot, and the ranger bringing over his personal trash can, and one guy taking a knife to it, trying to get some ventilation, and then Bairie Jr. getting some good draft to it with the hatchet, making some big holes.
Probably the follow-on story was really great too. I don't know, might have been years later. Kenny's dad died. And that evening, all his brothers were sitting around, and I was with them, and they had a cooler beer, and we were just kind of sitting around, drinking and kind of telling stories. Part of the tent, and without any hesitation, his younger brother goes, "You're shitting me. You made somebody puke?" I just kind of, just wagged his head. That's why he was impressed.
I think Don holds the record though for barfing. Second in Roundup.
Oh man. Well, Wendell was pretty bad.
Yeah. String going.
I think didn't Don have like six years in a row where he threw up like a dog?
Yeah, and then I remember the first year he didn't. He was real proud. He didn't really work to attain that.
That one year, son of a bitch did it twice. He threw up damn near all over my truck. And then he went into the shitter to take a shit. And it stunk so bad he took a shit. As soon as he got outside, he threw up again. I'll never forget that. I mean, he was down on all fours, man. It was doing it like a dog. It was bad news.
He threw up all night and he couldn't stop throwing up. He threw up all the way home too. Had to stop about every 50 miles and throw up.
That's what was the drag. It's like, everybody's hurting. And you get up in the morning and and you're just trying to cope. Next going, let's go home.
Let's go home.
He got the damn tent down, and he wants to get in the car and you can drive.
I've been with him before on
You can drive.
I asked everyone if they knew how this whole thing got started. No one really knew, but there was one guy who had a pretty good idea about how the whole thing got started.
Yeah, this is the 18th year, I guess. Is that what they're saying? I think this is the 18th year. And best I can recollect is there was a group from Farmington and a group from Jackson that were working together for Drury's just out of high school. And they decided that they was going to go out and go floating and and such, and they tacked a name on it right off the bat. Started out the Jack's Ford Jack Daniels Rebel Roundup. I think everybody, Jack Daniels bit everybody once or twice during that period, so they kind of dropped that name out of it because we go ahead and camp on the river and such, and then it kept getting bigger and bigger, and folks kept getting rowdier and rowdier, and well, maybe we just better camp at one spot. But that's how we ended up here. But it just started out with, I don't know, 10 boats or so floating down the river and camping, and then it went from there. We still try to float, but most of them just come out and party.
By 1 o'clock it had gotten up to 50 degrees, and that meant it was time to go canoeing. Canoeing is probably the best part of the whole trip. We drive up the river about 4 or 5 miles, unload the canoes, and pack up all our gear into them. Our coolers, extra clothes, food, whatever we plan to drink that day, and then one by one we head out on the river. Now for the most part the river is nice and smooth. You can just sit back and glide along. However, you do need to keep alert. There's always something along the river that will get in the way or try to dump over a canoe. The worst things are trees and rocks just under the surface of the water. They're hard to see and can tip a canoe very easily. Branches hang out over the water all along the banks of the river. Sometimes you don't have a choice, you have to go through them. In fast-moving water, getting hooked up on a branch can make you tip. While you're stuck on the branch, the river pushes a canoe out from under you. The next thing you know, you're in the water. In the summer, that's not so bad. In November, you don't want to go in the water. Shallow water has its hazards as well. If the water isn't deep enough, the canoe will get stuck. Sometimes if the canoe gets stuck at the front end only, the canoe will turn sideways. This is not what anyone wants. If the canoe lets go all of a sudden, it can cause you to tip over, much like someone pulling a rug out from under you. Also, other canoes may not have enough room to go around.
Will you guys get out of the fucking way?
If they hit your canoe, they can push you over. Fortunately, there was enough room for the other canoes to pass. Some of the other canoes got stuck too, but some made it through okay. Shallow water is bad enough, but if you get stuck in fast-moving deep water, it's worse. Getting out and pulling is out of the question. Using the paddles to pry yourself out of the rocks is the only way. The faster the water's moving, the harder this becomes. This is not a good place to tip over. Fortunately, we were able to pry ourselves free. If you don't mind the occasional bottoming out, tree stumps, or branches sticking out of the water, or the fact that it's only 50 degrees outside and the water is even colder, then you can enjoy the beauty around you and the company of good friends.
Frank, you think Don will ever see this?
Well, I'm sure.
And Don is pretty much a sissy crybaby. Oh, Don, don't ever come out here. You might actually get your... What's it? Water. It's wet.
Big old boat. Oh, it's cold.
Oh, boy, I wish I could be like Don and stay home. Is Krista making you chicken noodle soup today?
On the river, once the sun starts going down, it gets cold fast. After being on the river for quite a few hours, we are all glad to get off the river and back to the fire. The fire always starts out small, but for some reason, it doesn't stay that way. One guy thinks he can build a better fire than the next guy, and he throws another log on the fire. Then someone else moves them around, trying to get better flow to the flame. Then another person thinks it needs another log and throws another log on the fire. The next thing you know, the fire is taller than anyone standing around it. And even then, there's that one guy who thinks the fire still needs just one more log. The next morning it was 20 degrees, cold and cloudy. There was a thin layer of snow on everything. We had a good breakfast, packed up our gear, and headed for the last stop before going home, Alley Spring and Mill. Alley Spring is just on the other side of the hill across the highway. The spring pours out 810,000 gallons of water a day. The spring water is crystal clear. You can see plants growing in it, and sometimes there are animals on the surface of the water. But I think it was too cold for any bugs this morning. We look around the mill in spring and see what kinds of things have changed since the year before. It doesn't change much, but it's still fun to explore. There's a cliff on the other side of the spring that has a lookout at the very top. A small trail leads up to the lookout. From there you can see the whole valley. Our camp is just on the other side of the hill on the right. It's a beautiful place, but we can't stay forever. After we visit the spring, it's time to leave. All we have to look forward to now is a long road home. Another great camping trip has ended, but next year, we'll be back.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then.
Who cares about the clouds if we're together?
Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather. Happy trails.